There are tons of cashback credit cards in the market, and many earn a strong cashback earning rate. Yet there's only a few that have the capability to earn points where they can be redeemed for both cashback, but also use those points to transfer to partners such as airlines and hotels to redeem for travel. In this video, I'll be covering a couple options that are available to us, and they just happen to be issued through Chase Bank. The names of these cards are pretty similar, and they're known as the Chase Freedom Unlimited as well as the Chase Freedom Flex. How we'll do this is I'll go over what we need to know about both of them, as well as the reason of why you would want to pick one over the other, as well as look into how it looks like if we have both of them together at the same time, and end up by understanding how to get max value by having either of these cards. With that, let's get straight into it. Just like how both of these cards pretty much sound the same, their sign-up bonuses are also the same at $150 in cash back after $500 in minimum spend in the first 3 months. And when it comes to the earn rate, it's very similar as well and looks like this. We're looking at 5% back for purchases made through Chase's travel portal, where you can book the likes of airline flights, hotels, and rental cars. With both of these cards, we're also looking at 3% back on restaurant spend, which includes both when you're dining in the restaurant as well as eligible takeout services. We also get 3% on drugstore purchases, and then the superpower of these cards basically is that with the Freedom Unlimited, you're going to get 1.5% back on each and every dollar spent, irrespective of any category or otherwise. So basically that miscellaneous or other category, you still get a flow rate of 1.5% back. With the Chase Freedom Flex, on the other hand, we're looking at just 1%, but then the superpower of the Freedom Flex is like this. There's this concept of quarterly rotating categories, where essentially, and I'll put a cashback calendar on screen. So basically these months, aka the quarters, there's different categories where we can earn 5% back per dollar spent, up to $1,500 per quarter. And right before we move into our analysis, the big thing to know about this new card member offer of $150 back after that $500 in spend is that these do change over time. Like back in the day, like when it first came out, it was $200 back after $500 in spend. At the same time, there was kind of these special bonuses with the Freedom Unlimited where, hey, for a year, you could get 5% back on groceries, which if you see both of these cards, neither of them offer groceries as a category, except when maybe it comes out that rotating category with the Chase Freedom Flex. Point being, do definitely look at the sign-up bonus offers, because with Chase, once you get it, you won't be able to get another bonus for another 48 months, if that's even what you're planning to do. All right, getting straight into analysis. Basically, both of these cards are pretty similar, except just the fact of how they earn in certain specific scenarios, they're basically the same type of card. The thing is, they also earn the same type of currency. So that cashback number we keep talking about, it's basically deposited into your account as Chase Ultimate Reward points. These points can be redeemed for cashback and also just used at, let's say, a 1% value if you're redeeming your points on the Chase Travel portal if you just have one of these cards or even both of them. Let's say I was Team Freedom Unlimited over the Flex. So the Freedom Unlimited is giving me 1.5% back all the time. And that is really straightforward to know, where outside of those other categories where I'm earning more, because the Flex and the Freedom Unlimited are earning the same number of points per dollar spent, except that specific use case, I would say that, hey, I don't need to think about it, but I'm also kind of like, okay, hey, I don't know what category this is, but I know at least I'm going to earn 1.5% cash back on each and every dollar spent, no matter what, at minimum. On the other hand, with the Freedom Flex, we're looking at that 5% rotating category spend, which immediately, if someone doesn't want to juggle, or if you're like, hey, you know what, I don't want to keep track of all these type of things, I don't really care that much, but I do still want a solid earn rate, then the Freedom Unlimited is going to make way more sense. On the flip side, with the Freedom Flex, when you look at the math, it breaks down basically as follows. If we're looking at 5% back on $1,500 per quarter, then it's essentially $75 at maximum that we could earn through this kind of bonus earning structure. And so 4 quarters in a year, $75 times 4 is $300 in maximum cash back through this, quarterly bonus multiplier situation. If we break this math into simple English, given that all the categories are basically the same between both of these cards, it's really identifying that, hey, if I'm getting an extra 0.5%, and we're talking pure cash back here, on, that miscellaneous category, then how much do you need to spend if you're getting an extra 0.5% in that miscellaneous category to supersede essentially the $300 in cash back that you would get at maximum with the Freedom Flex? It's kind of crazy when I say it out loud, but if you take $300 divided by basically 0.5%, that's basically the amount that you would need to spend on the Freedom Unlimited, as if it were worth it to not spend and max out the categories on the Freedom Flex. And that number is $60,000. like 60 grand. That's crazy. When we get kind of into the minutia though, this number, it may not really be realistic. And the reason is when we look at the Chase Freedom Flex, it already earns, and both of the Flex and the Unlimited earn that 3x on dining. So for example, if you have a quarter where it's specifically with McDonald's spend, you're gonna get an additional 4 points, then that's really saying, hey, you're gonna get the 3x anyways, and then an additional 4. So that's actually 7 points. So the confusing thing about how the Freedom Flex is marketed, it's like, hey, 5% back on these categories, but really at the fine lines, it's saying you get plus 4 points on that category. So if that category, for example, the Chase Ultimate Rewards portal, if it gives you 5% back, but then it's a category for that quarter, then it's 5x points on the portal plus an additional 4. So you're looking at 9x per dollar spent. So I'm not gonna lie, the more I talk about this out loud, it just feels like, hey, the Freedom Unlimited is just an easier setup. Why would I want to juggle all these quarterly categories, and what is the value add that I would get? But basically this math that I just went over is the value add, where if those categories make sense for you, amazing. If you're not going to max out 1,500 every single quarter, or if a category is not applicable to you, then the math severely changes significantly and very fast. Moving on from there, an interesting scenario I would say is, hey, what if you have both cards? In this situation, and I used to be like this, and I'll kind of go over the rationale of the next steps I took. So essentially, when you have both of these cards, what is that extra advantage that you're getting? The extra advantage is basically saying, hey, if there's a quarterly rotating category that makes sense for me, then I'll get those additional 4x points per dollar spent on those categories. At the same time, with the Freedom Unlimited, let's say we're spending on fireworks for July 4th. So in this example, my assumption is that there's no real kind of vendor that, from a category perspective, that it would fall under. So it's kind of this miscellaneous or other spend. So in that case, maybe that's a good chunk of money you're spending on, fireworks or some type of one-time big expense. So another example, legal fees or, paying taxes or something like this is a good example of non-categorical spend. So from that scenario, getting that extra multiplier, it doesn't sound like much, but depending on the amount of spend, it could actually make more sense to have the Freedom Unlimited versus the Freedom Flex. Essentially, having both cards allows you to have flexibility, which if you don't have flexibility, then it's always that feeling of choosing to be like, hey, oh man, I could have got more points if I had the Freedom Unlimited versus just the Flex, or vice versa. But if you take out that kind of mental game out of it and just look at pure math, all else equal, if there's no issue for you to have both, I don't see why not to get both, in the sense that the bonuses, they're pretty straightforward, pretty, straight to the point, for lack of a better term. And at the same time, if you look at the annual fees, they both are zero. So their holding cost is essentially nothing. So if there's a total, quarter of like this, all these categories are not applicable to me, then you can just soft draw the card. You don't need to keep it on you. You don't need to keep it on your wallet. You can keep it on your phone if you want to tap to pay all the things. But in the end of the day, it really just comes down to how you want to play the game. Coming to our maximization step of how to get the most value out of either of these cards or both of them, it's really going to come down not just through optimizing your spend. So in other words, using the correct card for the correct category to get the most amount of points, not really that angle, but it really comes down to the Chase ecosystem as a whole. If we break it down, the Chase ecosystem, what I mean by that is that these cards earn points and they can be redeemed for cash back. But there are other cards within Chase's ecosystem where basically they have the capability to transfer points to partners such as airlines and hotels. The important distinction before I move forward is that with the portal, you are able to book travel experiences. At the same time, your points, if you just have one of these cards or both of them, it's going to be essentially 1 penny per point. And what that means in English is that if you have a $100 flight to pay for, that would cost you 10,000 pennies, or in other words, 10,000 points. So taking this example to the next step, let's say we have a $100 flight that we see on the portal. But for some reason, however this works, maybe that same $100 flight, let's just say it's on United. And for some reason, it costs you 5,000 miles on United's website. So if you have the capability to transfer just 5,000 of your Chase points to United's website, then you can get this $100 flight for only 5,000 of your Chase points. So instead of $50 in cashback value, you're actually getting 100. So each of these points, they're not just worth a penny a point, they could be worth, in this situation, 2 cents per point. The reason this matters is essentially there are the best cashback cards out there. But if that's the game that you're playing, then that's totally fine. Or if that's what you want to optimize for, like, hey, I have, example, $50,000 of expenses each and every year. I want to get optimally 5% on each and every dollar spent. Then I know for sure I'll be looking at $2,500 back in my pocket, cold, hard cash. And it just depends on that same question, like, are you team travel or team cashback? And with this travel example, not all of these examples are going to be so straightforward where you're getting 2 cents a point or otherwise. You know, there could be situations where maybe there's a devaluation in airlines, which basically means that same $100 flight we set for 5K miles exists. Maybe it's, you know, a $100 flight for maybe 11,000 miles. Just, you know, it's a crazy devaluation. But the point is, then right there, your cents per point valuation drops so significantly. It's actually kind of crazy. Coming back to the topic of our Chase ecosystem, even if you have one or both of these cards, we're not still able to transfer our points to these partners. In order for us to successfully do this, there's 3 options, in other words, 3 cards that avail this opportunity. It's going to be 1 on the business side and then 2 on the personal side. Because of the extreme value that points can afford you, and especially if you're a business class traveler or a first class traveler, or you want to do that aspirational travel or stay at certain type of hotel brands at their best property in the world and all of these type of things, right? It doesn't need to be a one-time experience. It can be a way you can set up your life. And if you earn in pure cash back, you know exactly what you're earning, which is not bad. It's just the fact. You know, it's very logical. You know what's going on. It's very mathematical, etc. On the flip side, with points, as we said, there can be extreme value. But to actually transfer your points to these partners, you need either the Chase Sapphire Preferred or the Chase Sapphire Reserve on the personal side, and leaving business cards out of scope. What I will say is choosing between those two, because one of them has a $95 annual fee, while the other has a $550 annual fee. So which one's right for you or not? I have a comparison between both of these cards. I'll leave it over here and I'll see you there. Thanks for coming to the end.